Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Just saying the names brings up locations like Canada, the Pacific Northwest, even Ohio. We think of the legendary Grassman. And we also think even Florida, where we have the legendary skunk ape. California, places like that. One thing that doesn't necessarily come to mind, however, is Western New York. Now, not to be outdone, the Western New York area has its fair share, believe it or not, of stories about encounters with the legendary Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch. Now, that being said, the entire state of New York is known to be a hotbed for Bigfoot sightings, especially like up in the Adirondacks. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk a little closer to home. We're going to talk about locations that are associated with Sasquatch, areas where there have been encounters with the Sasquatch. So without further ado, let's get on our hiking boots and let's get started. One of the locations in Western New York that is traditionally rich in Sasquatch sightings, and it's actually one of the places that comes to mind first, is Allegheny State Park and its surrounding vicinity known as Gahai Hill, or the Witch's Walk. Now, the Sasquatch that has been reported here is known as High Hat, and that's probably a pretty appropriate description of the Bigfoot itself because of its height and its conical shaped head, typical with all Sasquatch sightings. Now, on this channel, I did do an investigation of Gahai Hill, and I also did an investigation of Allegheny State Park itself. And while the Allegheny State Park investigation didn't turn up any Sasquatch, Gahai Hill was possibly a little different. One of the things Sasquatches are known for is throwing rocks and boulders at anyone who is in their way or who they don't want in the area. We actually hear this tale when Sasquatches tend to throw rocks at cabins. Now, when I was down by the water at Gahai Hill, rocks were getting pelted and landing into the water. So that was just one of two things. Was it actually someone messing around with me, or was old High Hat himself actually throwing stones in my direction to get me to leave the area? Needless to say, I didn't leave the area, but it was a very dangerous thing and unnerving thing to experience. So folks who have seen High Hat have reported seeing the large shadow-like creature roaming through the forests. No footprints were ever found that I've ever heard of, but there have been vocalizations. So I would say of all the places on this list, Allegheny State Park would be the #1 go-to, if not just for a nice weekend in the woods, to possibly encounter a Sasquatch. And don't forget Gahai Hill. Another hotbed in Western New York for Sasquatch sightings is actually in Cattaraugus County. This particular tale comes from nearby Sawmill Run Road, where witnesses reporting seeing a 6-foot hominid-like creature that had red hair. In this case, footprints were also found. I'm not sure if they were cast or not, but they were definitely found. And the traditional Sasquatch vocalizations were heard. This following story comes from Orleans County in the town of Clarington in around 1992. A couple of boys were out and they were just being boys, and they had their BB guns and they were just shooting off into the woods. They turned their attention eventually to a huge hedge that was in the woods, and they just started randomly shooting at it for whatever reasons. Then they started to hear noises emanating from the shrubs. Well, instead of running, they just kept shooting into the shrubs. And eventually a loud howl emanated from the shrubs, and it began to shake even more violently. And instead of running, they popped off a couple of more shots into the hedge. To their terror and surprise, a large Sasquatch-like creature stood up. Luckily for them, instead of charging them, just bolted off into the woods. So this is pretty much a cautionary tale of what not to do if you're shooting BBs into the brush and something begins to come to life. it could very easily be a Sasquatch. So a couple of more quick sightings for you. This one was from Niagara County in Middleport in 2002. A lot of these sightings here were simply vocalizations and not actually sightings of the Sasquatch. Just like in Albion in 2002, there was actually Sasquatch vocalizations that were heard by multiple people. Going back to Allegheny County in 1998, Bigfoot was seen by a river in the wintertime, and that must have made that for one very easy sighting. In Cattaraugus County in 2013, a Bigfoot actually caused a cabin to shake with its vocalizations and actually pounding around on the outside of the cabin, probably probing to see who was actually inside. These particular encounters are definitely unnerving. Erie County in 1998, in the area of Akron and Clarence, a couple was actually chased, which is very rare, by a large bipedal humanoid creature that had yellow eyes. Now when I think of yellow eyes, that the primate idea definitely comes to mind. That, to me, would probably be the most terrifying encounter on this list. Now, in Salamanca in 2001, off Old Road 17, a Sasquatch was reportedly seen crossing the railroad tracks. Now, I don't know if this was actually in the daytime or at night, but something like that would definitely be very hard to miss and what I would consider an epic sighting. Now, what about Western New York itself and the greater Buffalo area? While there hasn't been, to the extent of my knowledge, any Sasquatch reportings from the greater Buffalo area, the closest that we do have that would count actually comes from Blaisdell. Now, I wasn't exactly able to catch what year it was and exactly what kind of sighting it was, but it was seen along some railroad tracks. So Sasquatch typically doesn't come within the city proper no matter where we go. I don't care if it's Canada, Pacific Northwest, Ohio. It usually prefers secluded, wooded areas. So it's kind of odd that it would get that close into the town of Blaisdell. But as you've already seen from the reports that I'm going through here, most of them are definitely out in the rural areas, and that's probably a good thing. Now, more areas, not surprisingly, outside of the greater Western New York or Southern Tier area, do have their share of Sasquatch sightings, but they're not really a part of this narrative. We're talking out there in Geneseo County, we're talking Rochester, we're talking Syracuse, and of course then we kind of go into the mid-state, we go to the Adirondacks, and you could even make a case for the little tiny miniature Sasquatch that was reported in Central Park. Those are entirely different stories for another day, especially if it's one where I actually go to Central Park and shoot some kind of video, because there's plenty of stories that come out of that place. But years ago, I went to Split Rock Quarry. I've been there twice. You probably have just seen the second video not too long ago on my channel. It took me 2 times to get out there to actually find the stone crusher. Years before, and it's footage that I just can't seem to find. I did look for it because I wanted to put it on this channel. I was looking for the stone crusher, and I came across what I consider a Sasquatch home. Now, what is a Sasquatch home? Well, basically, it was a perfect dome-shaped structure that was made by a bunch of trees that were all bent symmetrically to look like it was a shelter. I don't see, thankfully, any evidence of that here, and of course I didn't expect to. And I didn't run into any kind of Sasquatches when I was out there both times doing the Split Rock Quarry episodes, but just seeing that bit of evidence actually leads me to believe that there would almost have to be something out there. And why wouldn't there be, especially someplace like Split Rock? Because it's actually out of the way, it's heavily wooded, but he would have to make way for the occasional ATV or motorbike. So yeah, there was that. Now, another honorable mention that I'm gonna throw into here is not exactly Western New York. It's out just past Allegheny. Those who are familiar with my channel have seen my video about Kinzu State Park, and that is 110% a hot Sasquatch area. I didn't get to see anything when I went out there, but I will be filming a sequel to that. Now, down below where you see the remains of the twisted wreckage of the bridge that the tornado hit, down in that entire valley, people have reported seeing Bigfoot type creatures roaming around down there, and they've heard the vocalizations, and footprint castings have been made from that state park. It's such a thing that when you go into the gift shop, there's actually t-shirts that have a Sasquatch actually walking across the Kinzu Bridge. Now, as far as I know, there is literally no proof of that. However, there is a very famous photo that does show a Sasquatch picture that was taken at Kinzu State Park. I have it on the other video, but I'm going to show it here again because why not? This is a video about Sasquatch in Western New York. And once again, there are areas outside of that, like Erie, PA, Cleveland, not Cleveland area city proper, but like in Ohio, closer to New York state line, Pennsylvania state line, that are rich with folklore about Sasquatch. And those are videos that one day in the future I will be doing. But yeah, Bigfoot, Kinzu State Park. And you can take the trail down there by the wreckage of the bridge supports, which I will be doing soon, like next year, because for whatever reason it's closed right now. So be on the lookout for that video, folks, coming soon. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get ourselves a Bigfoot. So the closest you're ever gonna really get to doing any squatching at any of the places that I've actually brought up would be Allegheny State Park and Kinzu. I would say any other places that I mentioned in this video may have been like just kind of one-offish sightings, and they really wouldn't be decent areas to go expecting to come across Bigfoot. So if you're gonna go squatching, which is exactly what it's called in this field, you would go to Allegheny State Park or you would go to Kinzu State Park. So remember, if you're going to do something like that, dress for it. If you do bump into a Sasquatch, don't chase it, don't harm it. It's illegal in many countries anyway, and he's a lot bigger, stronger, and scarier than you are. So just bring your camera, try and get the evidence of it, and don't be surprised when you run into the unexpected. And with that being said, we're out of here. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can be notified when videos drop. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I would sure appreciate it. And we will see you next time.